entire
Every
world?
single one and how to use it?
Well, no, I don't know every single one and how to use it. I know the names of the big ones, the ones that you use. But I know my own name too.
So let's see. First, what is a Varga chart? You ever heard of a Varga chart? I'm talking to the new students. Jane.
Don't ask me anything.
You're out. You haven't slept yet, have you? Because you've been with Amma.
I had a very rough one.
Okay. Well, let all this go into your subconscious mind, okay? And just make sure you read everything 3 times. You'll need to at least read it 3 times. This is some pretty dense stuff here, without a doubt. But what a Varga chart is, and we touched on Vargas when we did signs, and then we did sign divisions. Remember, we took each sign and we broke it down into smaller parts, and then from those smaller parts we made a new sign? That's a Varga chart, a divisional chart. So at that point in time, we just divided the signs up and made new charts, but that's all we did. This section here, we're actually interpreting what those different charts mean. And in those different charts, we can see everything about a specific area of life. So for example, if we take all the signs and divide them into 10 parts, and then make a new chart with the 10th division in each sign, with the new chart that we've made from that, we can see everything about career. We can see what your boss looks like. We can see whether your boss is male or female. We can see when you change jobs. We can see what your office looks like. We can see whether you have karma to have a big, nice place, or whether you have karma to stay at home, or whether you have karma to have like a dump of an office. It's all there. Like those you don't see those details in the Rashi chart. It's too much. Because, we also, so in that way, and the parents, we can see what the personality of your father and what he did for a living and how his childhood was and everything of this nature when we break each sign into 12. So in this way, the divisional charts are like a magnifying glass of a particular house. They help us see deep into one area of life. Okay? That's the concept of a Varga chart. The main concept. It's a magnifying glass into the Rashi. It's not a separate chart because we're making the chart based on the Rashi, right? We're just dividing the signs up, and out of that, a new something is growing. But it's all growing from that same Rashi chart. So when we look at the Rashi, it's all there. It's just another technique to get the information out. Okay? Makes sense, right? Parashara uses 16 Varga charts. And those 16 are called the Shodasha Varga. Now, the nomenclature. How we name these. It's still on the first page, divisional charts. So sometimes the divisional chart is based on the number that it's divided up to. Like the Navamsha, it's Nava, 9, Amsha. It's the 9 division chart. Where sometimes the Navamsha is called the Dharmamsha, the division that shows your Dharma. Sometimes they call it the Bhagyamsha, the division that shows your Bhagya, your luck and fortune. So sometimes they give it, the name is based on, the number of the divisions. Sometimes it's based on how and why we use it. Now, there's multiple variations of sun charts. Our next little thing here. Multiple variations. So, and here we're going to use the example of the Drekana to show multiple variations. Because I really like the multiple variations of the Drekana. Now, if we took a magnifying glass to the third house, what are the significations of the third house?
Brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters. What else? Skills. What else? Courage. Anything else?
Short trips. Short distance travel.
So a lot of different significations of the third house. Can we see them all from the same Varga?
Perhaps not. Try not to go ahead.
Only if you're an expert.
Nah, even if you're an expert, you'll still break it down differently. So, what we're going to do next, and we can see that there's different ways to break it down. Parashara doesn't tell us that there's different ways, but in the one chapter where he taught us how to break them down, he said that the Drekana is when we break each sign into 3. 10 degrees, 10 degrees, 10 degrees. He said that the Drekana is for siblings. But then later in another chapter, Parashara says the 22nd Drekana will kill you. What's that have to do with brothers and sisters? It's not brothers and sisters, right? It's very different. So we see Parashara doesn't tell us that there's different ways to use it, but he's using it in different ways. And we see him using it in different ways. So there's not a direct statement, but there's full examples throughout BPHS. Let's flip the page 2 and 3. Luckily they open out together. So these are our 4 Drekanas. You see these 4 charts there? I'm going to explain them and then we're going to each calculate 4 Drekanas. Okay. So Drekana is the deeper insight into the 3rd house. Now this first one, and the names of these are simply, they're kind of arbitrary. The names in Sanskrit for them are just based off of how they're calculated, and those names would be a bit too extreme. So these names are kind of standard nicknames for these charts. The fact that the first one is called the Parashara Drekana, they're all Drekana, just Drekana. But how do we differentiate each of them? We need to kind of give them a nickname. So Parashara Drekana, saying Parashara is just the nickname for it, okay? And the Parashara Drekana, if you look at the sign Aries, it has 1, 5, 9. We divide it into Aries, Leo, and Sag, okay? And if you look at the Taurus sign there, that's divided into 2, 6, 10. That's 2 is Taurus, 6 is Virgo, 10 is Capricorn. So each sign is divided into its trines. And if you look at the first sign, Aries, that's 1, Aries. If you look at the second, Taurus, that's 2, Taurus. If you look at the third sign, Gemini, it starts with Gemini. If you look at the 4th sign of Cancer, it starts with Cancer. Everybody see that in the chart? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is the chart we use to see brothers and sisters. When we make this chart, in this chart, you look at the 3rd house and that'll show your brother or sister, whichever that tends to be. And we'll learn how to tell the difference between a brother and sister. When we do D7, we're gonna go over D7 in a way where we learn how to tell a male or female child. If you can tell if the kid is male or female, then you can tell whether the brother is male or female. You can tell whether the boss is male or female. So once we, in the D7, we'll focus on that aspect. But so the 3rd house shows the first sibling. The 3rd from the 3rd house shows the second sibling. What's the 3rd from the 3rd?
The sibling of the 3rd one.
The 5th house. So the 3rd house shows the first sibling. The 5th house shows the next sibling. And the 3rd from that shows the 3rd sibling, which is the 7th house. So in this way, we look at the Parashara Drekana to see brothers and sisters. Now let's go to the Jagannath Drekana underneath. Now, as I said, Jagannath Drekana, it's a nickname for it. It's, there's no name differentiating these two. But if I told you the Drekana that's calculated versus trines versus the Parashara that's calculated to, it gets to be a long and confusing. So we just say Jagannath Drekana. That's the nickname for this one. Now, if we look at this one, it's again Aries. If we look at the first sign Aries, it's 1, 5, 9, just like the last one, right? But look at the next one, 10, 2, 6. That's Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. The next one is 7, 11, 3. It's Libra, Aquarius, Gemini. So what happens in the Jagannath Drekana is each of the signs start with the cardinal direction only. Where in the Parashara Drekana, each sign starts with the sign itself and then goes to its trines. In the Jagannath Drekana, each sign starts with the primary, the cardinal sign in Kendras, and then goes from there. Slight different variation, right? Once I get done explaining it, we'll all calculate it, and you'll see it'll make a big difference in your chart. It's a whole different chart that is made from there. Now, this chart is used to see the parakrama, the courage, the boldness, the willpower of a person. And it shows when things get activated, when the fire gets started, when you're instigated to do things. If there's a combination in your chart that shows you'll be a millionaire, when are you going to get off your butt to go earn $1 million? The Jagannath Drekana is going to show us that. At the same time, if there's a combination in your chart that shows you're going to go bankrupt, when are you going to go and make the mistake to get bankrupt? The Jagannath Drekana is also going to show us what activates that. So this shows our parakrama. When we get either bold to do good things or overbold to fall over. So, but this is that parakrama, that activation, our motivation, our boldness, our courage, and the fulfillment of the fruits of our actions. Then the next page, page 3, we have the Parivritti Triad Drekana. Parivritti means regular order. So what they do is they divide each sign into 3 parts and look at how they calculate with signs in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Pretty easy, right? That's called Parivritti. It's just regular order through the signs. This calculation of the chart is used to see your skills and abilities. Now, the Navamsha particularly shows, and we'll go into differentiating because there's a relationship between the Drekana, the Navamsha, and the D27. The Drekana shows us our application of our skills. The Navamsha shows our skills, what they are. But just because you're maybe good at cooking doesn't mean you're cooking. Because you're good at yoga doesn't mean you're doing yoga. This Drekana will show the application of our skills, what we're applying. And if we're not applying a skill, what's blocking that skill from getting utilized? This Drekana will show that. Third house relates to skills because it shows our hands. And at the general level, if you just think what most skills are done with, they're done by our hands. Even if you're doing math, you still need to compute on paper something or use a calculator. You know, you still need your hands for your average skills. You know, talking, that's a skill as well, but it's relatively speaking. This shows our skills and what blocks them. Now, so this one was regular order. Now, this 4th Drekana. This Drekana is very important for Ayurvedic practitioners. Very important. And the one that we just did, the Parivritti, that one's very important for career type, you know, for doing career guidance and things of that nature. This Drekana is, the Somanath Drekana, is very important for health. Now, if you look at the way it's divided, the first one is 1, 2, 3, just like the last one, right? But then look at the next sign. 12, 11, 10. It's going backwards. And then you look at the third sign, 4, 5, 6. Look at the next sign, 9, 8, 7. So it's a regular order. Because if you look at the odd signs, look at Aries and then look at Gemini. 1, 2, 3. Then you jump to Gemini, 4, 5, 6. Jump again to the odd sign, 7, 8, 9. So what this does, it's a regular order, calculating in odd and even signs. Now, it's an important thing to notice how these Varga charts are calculated. Because the Varga charts and how they're calculated, there's a secret to what they reveal based on their calculation. What aspect of the house is coming out is seen in how they're calculated. So in this regard, male and female is being shown. And it's a regular order. Regular order generally relates to human beings. And it's human beings and it's showing male-female calculation. So this shows the interaction between men and women. this Drekana, the third house is called Matuna Baba, the house of copulation. This house shows all about sexuality. The Lagna Lord of this chart will show what the person's ideals are relative to sexuality. If it's exalted, the person would never sleep with somebody they weren't fully in love with. They'll totally be much more chaste and everything. There'll be stronger sexual ideals. If that Lagna Lord is debilitated or afflicted, it'll be a person who, if they get a little aroused, they'll go see a prostitute. It'll just show certain ideals relative to sexuality. Because of that copulation, it's the Matuna Baba. At the same time, sexuality is the Shukra Dhatu in Ayurveda. It's the semen or the ovum is the Dhatu in the body. It's called Shukra Dhatu. And there's a connection, and you got to understand some Ayurveda to really get what I'm talking about now. But there's a connection between the Shukra Dhatu and Ojas. Ojas is the immunity and the immune system. If the Shukra Dhatu, that sexual tissue, is strong, then it's producing a healthy immune system. If the sexuality goes down, the immune system goes down. And anybody who works with cancer patients or any of that kind of thing, you'll see that when somebody gets AIDS or cancer or anything of that nature, when they start to get sick, the first part of their body that collapses is their sexuality. They lose their sex drive. Then organs and other things will start to go. Their kidneys won't fail, and they will still have a sex drive. They'll lose their sex drive, and then the kidneys fail. The Ojas falls away first with the Shukra Dhatu. Those two collapse, and then everything else loses its support. Yeah.
But it's also that the food builds the seven dhatus, and it's the last.
So that's the other direction.
Yeah.
But there's two. You see, the thing is, the connection between Shukra and Ojas is a double-edged sword.
Yes. Yeah.
From one level, we look at the Agni and the digestion. And so food is eaten and digested and turned into rasa. That rasa goes into the bloodstream and then becomes blood, rakta. And that rakta goes into the body and turns into each of the different dhatus and goes down and supports Shukra. So the strength of the digestion supports the Shukra dhatu, supporting the immune system. But in the same way, the Ojas is also supported by meditation and peacefulness and pranayama. And if you support the Ojas in that way, that Ojas will also feed over and support the Shukra and support the dhatus the other direction. And that's how you have people who live off of air and things of that nature, because the Ojas is supporting the Shukra instead of the Shukra supporting the Ojas. But there's right there, there's a connection. That because the Shukra is a physical thing, you can touch it. Ojas you can't touch on a physical level. You can look at somebody and see that they're glowing and healthy. If there's not Ojas there, you see them run down and they look tired in their face. They're lacking Ojas. You can't touch it. You can't see it under a microscope, but you can notice it. Their aura is glowing or it's lacking luster. That's the Ojas. And that Ojas creates the immune system. Western medicine doesn't they look at these, whatever it is in the blood to see the immune system. But from the immune system is strongly impacted by the state of mind. And that connection between the Shukra Dhatu, which is related to Matuna Baba, is seen in the Somanath Drekana. So that's why it's very important for Ayurvedic doctors to look at what is hurting the Ojas. And when the Ojas is hurt, then also the sexuality is hurt.
So does one have to calculate each different type of chart? Like the fascia?
Yeah, they're all, we calculate which one we need for what we're looking for. If you want to look at someone's sexuality, in the Somanath Drekana, you can see when somebody's going to be celibate and when they're going to be hyper sexually active.
So you look at the degrees?
Yep. Each one of these little boxes relates to 10 degrees. Okay? In each of these. The Drekana is 10-degree division. So let's take a quick little break and let's each calculate all 4 Drekanas that we have.
So you have to know the degrees in your own chart.
Within 10 degrees.
Okay.
If it's 3 degrees, it's falling in the first one. 16 degrees, it's falling in the next one. So it's 0 to 10. 10:01 to 20, and 20:01 to 30. So let's calculate each of these, and everybody remembers from our Rashi division how to make new charts with this, right? Who doesn't?
How to make new charts.
Might not.
In the Rashi, and then start mixing.
Okay.
So we don't look at the lagna in the divisional chart?
We do, but that's another level. So let's go specific. I just want to kind of test them out.
So Mars would be very important in this future. Karaka.
Mars is important, except for Somanath Drekana, Venus becomes important because of the Ojas and Shukra Dhatu.
That's the fourth one.
Because it's connected to the sexuality and health and rejuvenation, and otherwise Mars is very important. So Karaka planet. No. And that was a good example. In general, it's the planet of the house that we're talking about. So it's Drekana. Drekana's third house. Karaka, the third house, is Mars. So Mars becomes very important. But we also got to take into account the area of life we're looking at. Okay. So, like for the D7, it shows children. Children are, what's the Karaka of children? Jupiter. But we also have to look at the moon to see about a woman's ability to sustain a pregnancy. So we look at the Karakas for that area of life. Not just the Karaka, the Karaka of the Baba that house relates to.
So what's the karaka for staining for pregnancy? Venus?
Moon. Moon, the mother.
Oh, right.
The person has to, Venus is a woman when her hips are still thin and she's gone through puberty, but she hasn't really entered when a woman becomes a mother, the body fills out a whole lot more. And that period in between, that when she hits puberty and when the body starts to put on that extra weight,
Over
to
here in the United
support.
States, it's excess.
Yeah, I know.
That's for sure.
Puts on that extra weight to support mothering. The hips get more weight. The when the body fills up, then it becomes more moon. So that ability to become more moon to support childbirth is the moon, because Venus will show an abortion if a woman doesn't fill out. If that Venus energy stays there, Venus will cause an abortion. There's a
Like the Venus doesn't want to become a mom.
either or.
A mother.
Yeah. Say again.
I said the Venus doesn't want to become a mother, so it won't let the body change.
Yeah. It's the dancing girl has an abortion. That's the easy way to remember it. The dancing girl, Venus. She's skinny, she's young, she's not interested in having a child yet. So, yeah, Venus, but that's D7. Let's focus. Karaka planets. So we look at the planets as significant, and those planets have to be strong. If the moon is weak in the Saptamsha, then the woman's ability to sustain a pregnancy becomes less. In marriage, when we see marriage in the Navamsha, if Venus goes to the 12th house, the chance of the person getting married or staying married is removed. Because the Karaka goes to the 12th house, it's gone. So the Karaka will show the general energy of that area of life.
Is that in every case when the karaka goes to the 12th house?
It generally
messed
removes
up.
the significant, yeah.
Oh.
Most of the Dushtanas, 6, 8, and 12. But the 12th really generally removes it. Because not only is it the 12th house of like for example, Venus going to the 12th house of the Rashi,
Isn't that-
it shows good for exports.
oh.
You know, it's physical level of reality. But then all of a sudden we've zoned into just love life. And then the Lord of Love goes to the 12th house of love life. The 12th house of love life is the loss of love life. So the Lord of Love goes to the house of loss of love life.
But how does that work?
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but
If we
Venus
look,
is exalted in the natural.
but we're talking Navamsha.
Oh,
If you think Mercury is the Lord of skills and career, right? If the 12th house of the Dashamsha shows, end of career. If the Lord of career goes to the house of end of career, it's a lot different than going to the 12th house of the Rashi that shows end of, the physical body.
oh, because we're looking at the matter.
We're looking at the particular matter.
Oh,
That's the key.
got it.
Exactly. Good. Then we look, so first is Karaka planet. So you see how important that is. Literally, if Venus is in the 12th house, the person either won't get married or won't stay married. It's that simple, of the Navamsha. Karaka afflicted in the Varga chart removes it basically destroys that Varga chart. It weakens that energy in the person's life.
What does?
The Karaka in that Varga chart.
You go with the idea of this, some people do it, some people don't. This Karaka, Bhava, Nasha.
No, I don't use that. Prashara doesn't mention that, and Prashara's slokas don't support that.
So where did they get this from?
I think it's either Phaladipika or Jataka Parijata. Do you know what it is, Eric? Is that Jataka Parijata or Phaladipika that's coming out?
I'm not sure, but Sanjay uses Charakaraka.
Yeah, and so it's a sloka, and it's a interesting sloka that you can interpret in different ways, and we interpret it a very different way than what you're saying. Yeah, but we don't use that. And you can look at a chart, and actually, I know remember we were talking this morning about astrologers. I know a particular astrologer who used that rule. They saw Jupiter in the 5th house, and they told the person that they won't have children. They were so oversimplistic with that rule that they told the person that they won't have children because Jupiter was in the 5th. And the person was a very motherly person who really wanted children, and I looked, and there's incredibly beautiful children karma in the chart.
Just from looking at the Rashi chart?
I looked at all the charts.
She got the
This
example
astrologer
in the
told them, because Jupiter was in the 5th, that they wouldn't have children, which is absurd and insane.
What's that? The Karaka in the house destroys.
Destroys the house. It's a rule that certain schools follow.
I know. Yeah, never mind. Yeah.
It has something to do with the yin yang. If there's too much of an energy, it sort of. That was explained to me once.
Yeah, I know. But does it work?
Right.
And one thing, I haven't seen it work, and so to be predicting based on it,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah, is it in a shloka somewhere?
It is.
Oh, it is.
But we interpret the sloka very different, and it's not in Parashara.
Well, it's because my brother has that same thing, Jupiter in the 5th
Uh-huh.
in Virgo,
Yeah.
and he's got 3 kids.
He's got 3 kids. And I bet you they're beautiful kids with Jupiter.
They're one kid, he's psychic. He's like at home with mom, and he keeps pointing at the light, and he goes, "Daddy, fix the light." And she's all, "Why is Daddy gonna fix the light?" And he goes, "Daddy's fix the light." And then she goes and turns the light on, and the light goes, and she wigs. She goes, "Wow, this kid is like." He's lying there in bed, and
Is there a K2 aspect? K2 Rashi aspect?
Jupiter K2.
It's Jupiter K2.
Yeah.
So it's not just Jupiter. So you see what it so it's giving great effects. Any which way. So when you actually apply it, the Karaka is not hurting the house. Okay, so next. So Karaka, then the Karaka Bhava. So Karaka planet, the planet that significates the area of life, then Karaka Bhava, the house that represents that area of life. So when we're looking at relationship, and we go to the Navamsa to look at relationship, what house should we look at?
No,
Seventh house
That's a night.
for relationship. When we're looking at the Dharma in the Navamsa, then we look at the ninth house. When
Wait, isn't marriage? This confuses me.
mhm.
Isn't marriage also considered a ninth house thing in the Navamsa?
No.
Not ever.
We'll get to Navamsa. Let's focus on. We'll go through each of the charts, and we're going to talk about the Karaka Bhava in each chart. I'm just going to right now we're going to talk about the principle, and then we'll apply it in each of the Varga charts.
It would be for the third partner, I would think. 9,000
Yeah,
miles.
we'll get there.
I know the seventh house is relationship because Sanjay taught me that because that's
Yeah.
where the sexual organs.
Much more than that, though, too.
I know, but he
Yeah.
he said, why is it? And then he told me that.
Why
So I
not
just remember
Upapada
it.
in the Vamsha? That's what he
Because Upapada is the if the partner is the seventh house, then that's the Shatrupada of the partner.
Oh.
It's the sixth house from the partner. So Arudas are used very different in Varga charts. So you unless you know how to use them, don't play with Arudas in Varga charts. Okay.
All right. I don't want to increase my confusion.
especially in a chart, especially in Navamsa. Navamsa chart, the Arudas are the most complex to use.
Really?
Yeah.
I hope you're writing about this one.
I'm not gonna, I don't think I'm going to touch the Navamsa. It's with Arudas there, the complexity is. With all the other charts, it's like for example, now let's look at the D4, the fourth divisional chart. Karaka Bhava, it represents land. That's how we see about property and all this kind of stuff. So what house is the Karaka Bhava of the D4? Fourth house of land and property and all that kind of stuff. So we look at that Karaka Bhava. We only use the A4 in that chart. It's a simple chart, so we can easily get away with using the A4 to see what the property, what people think about the property.
Oh.
Yeah. But in general, just be careful using Arudas in Varga charts. In a simplistic chart like the D4, we can be more, it's easier. When you start having, because like even he said, there's like the first partner, the second partner, the third partner, you all see from different houses. Arudas are changing for each partner. Dharma, so yeah.
So how does that apply looking at the chart from the Aruda Lagna in the divisional chart?
Aruda Lagna and say this again.
So if we look at
this is the thing, Varga charts have two Arudas. They have the Aruda Lagna calculated from that Varga's Lagna,
right,
and they have an Aruda Lagna that is calculated based on the degree of the Rashi chart.
for that divisional chart.
Right.
So there gets to be two. So don't play too much with Arudas in the Varga charts. They don't give you the
And how
amount of
much
information.
do I need, right?
The amount of information they give is not needed for the mistake that you could make if you do it wrong. So Karaka Bhava. So for like the D4, when we're looking at land, it's the fourth house. In the D10, D10 shows career. So what house should we be looking at? 10th house. Very simple. Now, once we find the Karaka Bhava, we read the houses from the Karaka Bhava, based upon the Karaka Bhava. And we'll do some examples of that, especially when we're in the Dashamsha.
Read the houses from
Yeah.
the Karaka.
And the two rules we
Karaka
use is
Bhava.
Bhavat Bhava
From the Karaka
Karaka
Bhava
Bhava.
and the Karaka?
from the Karaka Bhava.
From the Karaka Bhava.
Yeah. And the two rules we use are Bhavat Bhavam and Argala. And with those rules, you can understand every house in a Varga chart. So Parashara doesn't give us every house in a Varga chart, but he gives us the rules of Bhavat Bhavam and he gives us the rules of Argala. And with those two rules, we understand every house.
If we do double-related planets give bad results in divisional charts?
What do you think?
I don't think yes, but some.
What do you say?
Debilitated planets. But there's something about debilitated and exaltation both give excellent results.
That's what I.
So.
Excellent results.
Yeah, from Sanjay.
You sure?
Doesn't it
I
want
remember hearing it, like,
would give
talking about
significant
it.
results. Let's put it that way.
But I don't know
Half-
enough about
half-
it, so I'm not gonna.
Half you both have half memories.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Isn't it retrograde? If debilitated planet retrograde
Well,
acts
that's Nietzsche and Uchabanga. We'll talk about it when we get to the D10. Remind me of the D10 because that's where it becomes very important.
Yeah, so I have a WA planet D10.
I mean, when we get to D10, you bring it up and we'll talk about that.
That's so many, so depressing.
I have a lot of multiple planets in the D10.
We'll see how depressing it is.
So many debilitating.
Okay, so we look at the Karaka planet, then we look at the Karaka house, then we look at the Lagna Lord. Now the Lagna Lord in a Varga chart will show us the ideals in that area of life. So when we looked at the Somanath Drekana, the Lagna Lord shows us the ideas relative to sexuality, to Matuna. When we look at the Lagna Lord of the Dashamsha, the house of the Varga of career, what kind of ideals is that going to show us?
Well, your ideas about your career.
Your ideas about work, career, what kind of jobs you'll have. Are you so idealistic that you won't do certain work, or will you do any work?
Right. So looking at the 10th house in the second one for skill.
In the second. First, Lagna Lord. Focus at the
Oh,
Lagna
the
Lord.
Lagna Lord.
So the Lagna Lord shows us the ideals. Focus on our topic.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Lagna Lord.
Lagna.
I'm covering everything.
So the Lagna
In
Lord
very
is the
systematic
Vasi or
order.
the
Okay.
Lagna Lord?
I'll be quiet.
Lagna Lord. Focus on the Lagna Lord. Merge into the concept of what does the Lagna Lord in each Varga show us.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's for the Rashi chart, right?
Huh?
Lagna Lord of the Rashi
Nope,
chart.
of each Varga chart. In each Varga chart.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Lagna Lord in the Rashi chart will only show your general ideas of life.
Mm.
I have an exalted Lagna Lord in my Rashi chart. Over idealistic.
So we don't see the position of that in the divisional chart?
No. If I want to look at my ideals in work, I look at the Lagna of my D10.
Mm.
And I use that Lagna Lord to see what my ideals are in the work related area. If I wanted to see what my ideals are relative to family, I look at the D12. D12 shows mother and father, like what I think about my parents and how I treat them. I use the Lagna Lord of the D12 and its placement in the D12, and that will show me my ideals relative to how I interact with my parents in that way. So that's the next thing. So we looked at the Karaka planet in that division. We looked at the Karaka Bhava and houses from it in that division. We look at the Lagna Lord and the ideals that it gives. And then we start playing with mixing the Rashi and the Varga together. And when, at that point, then we can start taking, like for the D10, we can take the 10th Lord from the Rashi chart, and we can look at it in the D10. And that's going to show us how we apply our consciousness. That's a very subtle detail.
Can you say that again, please?
Right here, number 4. Rashi and Varga integration. A planet ruling the Karaka Bhava in the Rashi can be seen in the Varga chart to see how the consciousness is being applied in that area of life. How you're mentally working with that energy. How you're applying yourself. It's a much more subtle level.
So you look at say the Lord of the 10th for the D10, Lord of the 10th in the Rashi, and you look at where it is in the D10, is that what you're saying?
And that's going to show how you're applying your consciousness. How you're applying your awareness. It's very much with the awareness of that level of life. Consciousness, how you're interacting with that area of life.
So you're looking at its condition, its strength, the
All
house
that.
is placed, and so if it's in an angular house, that's good. If it's in a Dishana, that means you're not,
And-
something's,
And even deeper.
okay.
Even deeper. When we get into these Varga charts and we start breaking down the houses, you'll see that the houses have different breakdowns. We're going to go into it, and you'll see how it's being applied. Like, for example, if the third house in the Dashamsha shows vacation from work. If the 10th Lord from the Rashi is placed in the third house of the Dashamsha, the person is applying their consciousness to try and figure out, how am I going to get more vacation from work? How am I going to get more time off? How am I going to get done early?
Why the third house? That's a.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But just understand the concept of taking that, and so into which house it's going to affect how they're applying themselves, where they're putting their energy into and their awareness.
Okay, is this a good interpretation? The 10th Lord in the 7th house.
The 10th Lord of...
The 10th Lord of my Rashi in the 7th. Am I trying to get my partner to do the work?
No, that's business. That's
Working
the
with
conscious... That's applying the consciousness to find something where you're working on your own and not for other people.
Oh.
Yeah. But we'll get to that in the D10.
Oh, independent.
Yeah. So, but the first thing is, what concepts are we going to be using when we start going through each of these charts? That's what we're...
My
And you guys are jumping.
This is complicated.
Can't keep you down.
Is where?
Seeing
It's in the
possibilities.
third house. The D10.
Mine
Her.
too.
So that means that
That we're
she
thinking about
has
vacation.
I'm
Scorpio
always
Lagna
on
in the
vacation.
Dashamsha.
Yeah, mine too. There you go.
It means that she hasn't worked in months.
Yeah.
And she's on educational leave or something like that. Right?
Educational leave.
Yeah. So you know that's...
And this is in the 10th house.
And
D10.
it's retrograde too.
That's good. Work. You're focused on work to get skills and better at your work, and it's a nice placement.
What?
They're all
sixth
good
house?
placements.
10th house.
Oh, tenth
Okay,
house.
we're getting the foundational theory before we hit these Varga charts. We'll be looking at each of our charts as we hit the actual area. We want to understand the logic behind what we're going to be looking at when we get to those charts, right? Just like we understood the different types of divisions, then we understand what are our rules when we start looking at this. And what I guess sometimes is I run into these Vedic astrologers, and they said, I've been studying for 15 years. And then we talk a little bit, and they've made up their own rules. I looked at this one guy's chart once. He's a famous guy. I won't say too much because this is recorded and be online. And 20-something years he's been doing Jyotish. Travels around giving readings. I looked at his chart. I looked at his Navamsha and I said, but you do da-da-da-da-da? He said, yeah. I said, your Navamsha's wrong. And I changed his Navamsha one sign over. And he's like, oh yeah. And I explained to him why that's his correct Navamsha. So we want principles. We want rules that we can apply. So these are our principles. We have to understand about these Karaka planets, Karaka Bhavas, how we read from the Karaka Bhava. We have to understand them, and we have to work from there. Now this next section, again, it's a foundation. If you go to the top of page 7, it's called Varga Arrangements. If we don't understand these foundations, once we start using the chart,